You were already going to do the dishes. Then someone asked you to do the dishes, and suddenly you didn't want to. Nothing about the sink changed. Same plates, same 5 minutes. You had already decided. You were halfway out of the chair. And now there's a small, hot, ridiculous refusal sitting in your chest. And some part of you knows it makes no sense at all. You'd think that's just stubbornness, a bad mood, being difficult, but look how precise it is. You didn't lose interest in the dishes. You lost interest the instant they stopped being your idea. And it isn't only chores. You decided to call her back tonight, then someone says you really should call her back, and now the call has a weight it didn't have a minute ago. You were going to book the appointment. Someone reminds you to book the appointment. Something in you sits down. So the real question isn't why you're stubborn. It's why your brain cares more about whose idea a thing was than about what the thing actually is. And the answer is that you were never defending the dishes. You were defending something your mind guards more fiercely than comfort, more fiercely than fairness. The sense that your life is being run by you. Threaten that, and it will happily burn a perfectly good plan to the ground just to prove the plan was yours to burn. Once you can see it, you start finding it everywhere. In how you were taught, in what you do for money, in the hobby that quietly stopped being fun, and in something you do to yourself most weeks without ever noticing you're the one doing it. It arrives 3 ways. Someone takes the choice away, someone pays you for it, or nobody does anything at all and you do it to yourself. Start with the first, because it's the loudest. The moment something is taken off the table, it gets more attractive. Not a little, reliably. Put a rope in front of a painting and people lean in. Announce that a book has been pulled from the shelves and the queue for it grows. Tell a child that one particular toy is off limits and watch that toy become the only toy in the room. You felt this in the smallest possible dose. A wet paint sign makes your fingers curious about a wall you had no feelings about 10 seconds earlier. And here's the part that gives the whole thing away. It isn't that you suddenly want that thing. It's that you want the freedom back, and the thing is simply where the freedom happened to be stored. The blocked option lights up with a glow it never earned on its own. You can watch the glow switch off too. Lift the restriction, and the forbidden thing settles back into being ordinary, often a little disappointing. The banned book you finally get hold of turns out to be a book, which tells you the wanting was never really pointed at the object. It was pointed at the closed door. Which is why the book you were assigned in school and the book you found on your own are not the same book. One arrived with a hand on your shoulder. The other one you chose, same words, different object. Now the second way in. It's gentler and it's worse. In a well-known experiment from the early 70s, researchers went looking for small children who already loved to draw, the kind who go straight for the pens the moment they're free to. Some of those children were promised a certificate if they drew. So they drew. They got their award. Everyone was pleased. Weeks later, back in ordinary free play, those children reached for the pens noticeably less than the children who had never been promised anything. Nobody had stopped them. Nobody told them drawing was work now. The reward hadn't been added on top of the joy. It had quietly taken the joy's place. Before, the reason to draw lived inside them. Afterwards, the reason lived outside. And when the outside reason went away, the drawing went with it. You know, the adult edition, the thing you loved doing, that you were good at, that you finally started charging for. And somewhere in the 3rd month, you notice you don't do it on Sundays anymore. And you almost never diagnose that correctly. You don't think the reason moved. You think, I suppose, I loved it less than I thought I did, which is a much sadder conclusion, and usually the wrong one. To be fair, this doesn't make rewards poison, and the effect is narrower than the internet usually claims. It shows up for an expected, tangible payment attached to something you already loved for its own sake. A surprise thank you, or someone telling you the work was good, generally doesn't do this at all. The damage was never in being paid. It's in the reason migrating from inside you to outside you, and you almost never feel it move. So the 2 ways look like opposites. One shoves you, one pay you. Both quietly take your name off the act, and the act goes gray. Which brings us to the piece that makes the rest make sense. Take 2 people doing an identical thing. Same treadmill, same speed, same 40 minutes. One of them chose it this morning. The other was ordered onto it. Physically, that is the same event. Experientially, it isn't remotely the same event. And it isn't only in their heads. A strain you're in control of and a strain that's imposed on you don't land the same way in the body. Broadly speaking, the one you control costs you less. So ownership isn't decoration painted on top of an act. It's part of what the act is. Change who chose, and you have changed the thing itself. which means the dishes really did become a different chore in the 2 seconds it took someone to ask, and it gets louder when there are two of you. Watch what happens when someone tells you to calm down. You get less calm. Not because they're wrong often, they're right, and some part of you already knows it. But the moment your own state is being issued to you as an instruction, settling down would mean handing over the last thing you were still steering. The same trap swallows apologies. You are 3 seconds from saying sorry. Then you're told to say sorry and it dies in your throat because an apology you were ordered to give isn't really an apology anymore. It's compliance wearing an apology's clothes. Everyone in the room can hear the difference, which is how two reasonable people end up locked over something neither of them cares about. Each one sees plain stubbornness on the other side. Neither one can see that they are both doing the identical thing, holding the line on a trivial object, because it's the only place the bigger thing is currently visible. It's almost never really about the thermostat, or the route, or the dishes. It's about who gets to be the one deciding. And this is where it stops looking like a character flaw. The need to be the author of your own behavior behaves less like a preference and more like a requirement. When people have some genuine say in how they do a thing, they stay with it longer, do it better, and feel better while doing it. Take the say away, and the motivation doesn't get redirected somewhere else. It drains out. Nobody can tell you with certainty why we were built with that particular alarm, but you can see what it guards. A creature that can't tell the difference between acting on its own reasons and being quietly steered by someone else's has no way of noticing when it's being used. So something in you keeps a running tally of who is driving, and it does not like a wrong answer, which explains why the alarm is so badly calibrated. It fires over dishes. It fires over a reminder that was meant kindly. It fires at the person who loves you most over the smallest possible stakes because it isn't measuring the stakes. It's measuring the direction the instruction came from. A smoke alarm doesn't ask whether the smoke is serious. And there's a small cruelty folded into that. The people closest to you are the ones with the most standing to ask you for things, so they trip the alarm more often than anyone else. Which is why the smallest stakes and the loudest flare-ups tend to happen with exactly the people you would never actually want to fight. Which is why the strangest version of this needs nobody else in the room. Think of something you loved and then decided to get serious about. Reading, maybe. So you set a target. 20 pages a night, no excuses. And for a couple of weeks, it works beautifully. Then, one evening, you look at the book you used to look forward to, and there it is. That small, hot, ridiculous refusal. The exact one the dishes got. You did that. You appointed yourself the authority, and then you rebelled against yourself. That's the version almost nobody catches, because there's no one to be annoyed at. When the pressure comes from outside, at least you can see the hand. When you're the one holding it, all you notice is that something you used to love has gone quiet, and you conclude you must have stopped caring. Usually you hadn't. It had just stopped being yours. Which is why the rules you actually chose almost never chafe. The training plan you could abandon any morning and don't. The tradition nobody enforces. The promise you keep when no one would ever know. Same weight, same constraint. And it sits completely differently because it has your name on it. So the next time somebody digs in over something small and senseless, or you do, it's rarely about the dishes. Someone just reached for the one thing people can't stand losing. And you can still get up and put the plate in the rack. It only helps to know the fight was never with the plate. It was you. Checking the plate was still yours to pick up.